Okay, today we're going to be looking at our new REST API and using Claude right now to basically run cargo check and cargo build to make sure that we have no compilation errors. Some background on the API that we've developed. We essentially developed a new backend for StateSet Cloud and for StateSet.com. Essentially covers all of our APIs for commerce operations. And one of the main things that we can look at is just kind of the core technologies. Just give some background. So we're using Axum as the web framework. So this is basically our web services API. It gives us our routing, gives us the ability to create different paths. Essentially, it's kind of like an express server coming from Node or Flask from Python, and essentially gives us the ability to kind of create these different paths and then stand up a server. So Axum, super fast as well. So I think it's one of the fastest web servers that you can essentially deploy today. We're also using seaORM as kind of our ORM backend. And it's a relational ORM to help you build web services in Rust. So this is essentially our models, relationships between different models, CRUD operations, and we also have the ability to tie it to like a GraphQL engine if we want. So we can essentially put a GraphQL server on top of our API. So those are like the two main technologies. Now we have Postgres as a backend database, and we're running everything in async with Tokyo. We've also built in protocol buffers, gRPC API. So we have some like different protofiles, and we've also built in a REST API for interacting with orders, returns, warranties, invoices, purchase orders, manufacturer orders, bill of materials, anything really on the operational side of the business for an e-commerce brand. I think this goes beyond just e-commerce as well, and essentially we're building this out as a open source business source license technology. We welcome contributors, welcome any feedback on the API. It's kind of the next iteration of what we've been building. Our original kind of architecture was primarily built on this like three-factor app technology, where we have our StateSet web app, we have a GraphQL engine, we use Hasura, and then we have our backend database. And then this essentially gets sent, this gets an event that triggers different workflows, and then these workflows sit on temporal to make the state changes that we write back to the state change, and that's streamed to the front end. So this is how the architecture works for a number of our different applications that we've built. I think the one thing that we're going to be changing, so this is like our older architecture, we're going to be keeping this three-factor architecture. The difference will be this kind of state and event system and the serverless functions that we're designing will be run within the StateSet API. So the logic that's encapsulating this will be, some of it will be like command-based on the StateSet API, and other parts of it will be service-based. I think part of the reason we want to do this is for AI agents that can call these different commands. So if we're looking at things like returns, if we want an agent to approve a return, cancel a return, close a return, create a net new return, generate a shipping label, we can define these different commands and then tie them to specific handlers. And then the handler is tied up to or wired up to the main Axum web server. So that's the flow. Essentially, an API call will come in to this StateSet API. The handler will pick it up. It'll route it to the correct handler or to the correct command, and then we have our event system off of this as well. So if we wanted to like create a return, initiate the return, it'll save it in the database, and then we have, I believe, a webhook, an event here as well, and that will create the return request, create the event, and then send the event that a return was created, so that we still kind of follow this pattern of web app comes in, creates a state change, event system processes, sends out the event, and then if there's any other state changes, we can re-update the system. So we have our different commands. We have different services as well. So we have like an inventory service, an order service. So if there's something where it's like not necessarily a command, but we do need some logic, I think for like inventory balances, and like for doing certain processes where we have, I think inventory servers is a good example, like inventory adjustments or inventory sync is a good example, where like if a purchase order sheet comes in and we want to receive inventory for a PO line and adjust it, we can have these different services. So adjusting for a PO receipt is an example, allocating inventory for an order line, ship inventory for an order line. So these are examples of some of the functions that we have within like an inventory adjustment service, which will be run in conjunction with the rest of the code base, but not necessarily in this like handler command function kind of pattern. So that's another thing that we've built in here. But the handlers will be defined here. Approve, create, things like that. And then we have our handlers, we have our services, and then lastly we have different queries that we've set up. So this would be also for, if we look like the return example, we can have like get returns by order query, we can have get returns by date range query. So that's the other part that we've defined in here. So you basically have your models and entities, which are defined using seaORM. You have your handlers and commands, primarily for AI agents to be able to call and like trigger different workflows. And then we have our services for kind of inter-service communication and for running logic within the rest of the code base. And then queries for fetching data from the Postgres backend. And there's some other parts of this too, auth, like circuit breakers and like rate limiting and things like that. But that should give some context on the new REST API that we've been building. And like I said, it's open source, so if you want, you take a look at the code. And yeah, hopefully that gives some good background on what we're building on the operations side of things. Thanks so much.